Critical minerals and rare earths are an area which you hear quite a lot about. It's nearly always about how there's not enough of them in places like Europe and the US. What can we do about it? Well, certainly Eric is looking at this space and he thinks there is stuff that is being done at this moment in time and should make this landscape quite exciting for investors. Remember, all of this is for educational and engagement purposes only. Please do your own research and invest based on your own risk limits and why you're investing in the first place. One area that really comes up a lot at the moment, you hear a lot of press about it, critical minerals and rare earths, but it's still off a lot of people's radars. Could you just very quickly tell us what exactly they are?
Not all rare earth elements are critical minerals, and not all critical minerals are rare earth elements, right? They're two different buckets. But the United States, for example, I forgot the exact number, but metals that they deem critical for our functioning as a society, for national defense, and for energy. These are minerals that typically do not have their own mine. The one that I like to use as a great example that everybody will understand is antimony. So antimony, it was a very small industry because the price was $8,000 a ton. Now it's 60,000 a ton because China, let me just say this. So China and Russia, but primarily China, with virtually all of the critical minerals and the rare earth elements, including magnet metals, the heavy rare earths, they produce nearly half of the global supply. But Russia, for example, produces big chunks of a lot of these critical, I'm just going to call them critical minerals. The critical minerals, they go through China for processing. So China, when it comes to their own internal production and processing of product to go through the metallurgical stance to actually ship the critical minerals to all over the world, they control at a minimum 85% of the global flow of all critical minerals. At minimum 80%, but some of them are over 92%. Antimony happens to be somewhere around 87%. So China came out and said that they banned gallium, germanium, and the thing that's interesting about gallium being in this and antimony, it was those three. First, they limited exports last summer under the Biden administration. Then when we got a little further along, this is in retaliation for the United States cutting China off from high GPU chips from NVIDIA. We did this. They retaliated by saying, we're no longer exporting. And this is also a problem for every country because it wasn't just to the US. We're no longer exporting any of our gallium, germanium, antimony.
The clue is in the name, critical minerals, but they're critical. But why do all these things matter?
So guess what, Roger? With gallium, if you don't have gallium, you can't make semiconductors. Number one. Number two, antimony. It's known as the military metal. You can't create ammunition for war if you don't have antimony. It's also a flame retardant. So everything that we put into our soldiers so that if they get hit by a fire and don't burn to death, you need antimony in the outfits. You need antimony for rockets. You need antimony for many different weapons. And we don't have any of it anymore. We don't even produce any of it in the United States. There's one company that has a smelter, US Antimony. And you can look at that on the New York Stock Exchange. I'm not necessarily recommending it. It's gone up a lot. I own some because, but the problem with them is I called them early on. Stock was like 60 or 80 cents, 9 months ago, and it went to like $5 because they're the only one in our country that has the ability to process into an antimony product that they can then give to the government. And there's many applications for this. It's just that you only need a small amount, for it. So, many of these things, like look at vanadium. Vanadium is a big problem. President Trump is very proud about the fact that he sort of saved the steel industry here. Well, guess what the biggest usage of vanadium is? It's in stainless steel. It makes it twice as strong. The steel industry has adopted vanadium consistently. Vanadium is also key for industrial scale battery powered energy, vanadium redox flow batteries. If you don't have vanadium, you've got energy problems and you've got defense problems too, because and just economic problems, but you also have defense problems because vanadium is needed in many new rocket technology, a bunch of these different things. So you're talking about many applications, and a lot of them have to do with defending our country. And that's why they cut us off of antimony. That's why they cut us off of gallium, because they're like, if you're not going to let us buy chips, we're not going to let you even fucking make them.
So, I mean, on that front, there's been quite a lot of, not saber rattling, quite a lot of noise. There's this, can you explain the SOAA?
It's a bipartisan group called the Special Operations Association of America. All ex special ops guys that, I know the co-founder, Daniel Elkins, and they recently put a press release out that I joined the board of advisors as it pertains to trying to help with the critical mineral supply chain, because we have virtually all of these critical minerals, whether they're a byproduct, like with Perpetua, with it's a gold mine, but it's called stibnite on the graph, but it's antimony. So generally speaking, we have that stuff here. We have a ton of antimony in Alaska. And so what but the problem is what these guys don't understand. When I met with the founder of SOA, SOAA.org, what they try to do, they're a nonprofit. They were created to be in Washington to help impact policy that is affecting national security. So what they do though is they get intelligence from the field real time right now. I had dinner with the head of Special Forces Group 19 out of Utah in Washington in January. He's running somewhere between 5 and 6,000 active duty special forces. He's the head guy. And when I was talking through the challenges with the critical minerals, he can't believe that we are in this position, because I said, look, and here's the thing too. Yes, it's been in the press, Roger, but this problem is actually, it's not going to go away for years, because the real problems are going to happen in about 18 months to 36 months, because the government doesn't have stockpiles of things like antimony. Joe Biden gave over 45% of our stockpile. It's not classified information. There's a guy named Palmer Luckey who is basically creating a drone and next generation U.S. Company that's going to deal with the DoD, but he did it on his own dime. He doesn't take like bids, like Boeing goes in there and says they'll do this or whatever, and then he builds a product. He builds the product, then he sells it to the government. He was just in an interview and said that we think that if we went to full scale war with China, we would run out of ammunition in 8 fucking days. So the antimony in these issues, when the special forces guys, they're smart and they want to help the nation take problems that are so difficult and fix them. But guess what? The biggest bummer to all of this is when I explain to them the quickest you're going to get a discovery of new antimony, germanium, dysprosium, whatever it is, and getting it out of the ground is 15 to 20 years.
So presumably that means there must be some opportunities here for investors in this space. Are they going to make it more profitable, more beneficial for people who say, I'm going to invest in this space because we need it for national security?
Listen, this situation is going to continue to come up where the United States' ability to defend itself is at risk. And it's probably not for another year or whatever, but they're not telling us how much antimony they have. I just made a call this week as my new position. I did a deep dive on antimony through an institutional research firm that says that Bolivia has 7% of the antimony stockpile. They don't need that much. I said, look, they're a leftist country, but we need to take whoever our diplomatic relations are with Bolivia and buy some of that stockpile, because that could be the difference for like adding, if we got, half of their stockpile or something, in 18 months to 2 years while they're waiting for, by the way, the Perpetua mine that's going to produce probably like 25% of what we need of the antimony per year, but in non-war time. They're waiting for that to come into production, but that's 3.5 to 4 years away, man. We cannot get these critical minerals, and we have to develop them on our own soil. We need to speed up the ones that are advanced, but we also need to start for the long term, the grassroots stuff, the exploration companies that are finding these things. Phenom Resources, I'm a massive shareholder in that, so full disclosure. They've got the largest vanadium deposit in North America on surface in Nevada. It's the highest grade deposit as well. They have processing technology that could get us vanadium pentoxide in like 2.5 years. And it only will cost about 125 million to build an actual plant. So to build a mine is going to take 7, 8, 9 years and like cost 400 million bucks. So I'm just looking at different angles of like, what is the government, because they are funding things. Like they're not oblivious to this. But it's just that, like, look at the UK, dude. Hey, listen, whatever happened, I'll send it to you. Europe, the European Union just put an emergency on critical minerals last week.
So some of the recent press releases suggest that maybe there's going to be the Trump administration is going to give some tax breaks to people who want to put some money into this space that obviously needs that investment.
We need to get the Forestry Service neutered because they're the ones that hold up the flow of capital to permit and drill. And that has become a bloated, but it's still underfunded, ridiculous institution that doesn't even communicate with the Bureau of Land Management, that are the ones that really do the work on saying, okay, you can drill, you can't drill. But then they have to hand it to the Forest Service. And a CEO of a publicly traded company that I talked to yesterday told me there's one man in the Forestry Service that is holding up a third of all projects that want to drill in Nevada right now. But what we need some mitigation of the powers of the Forest Service to streamline the permitting process for the capital to flow into the ground. The second thing that I suggested was Americans should get a tax moratorium, a capital gains tax moratorium for 5-10 years, okay, for investing in any projects that are drilling on U.S. soil, whether they're private companies, public companies, if they're a Canadian public company, shouldn't matter. If the project and the work is going in the ground here, I suggested a complete capital gains tax moratorium. I don't know that that's what they'll end up doing. I'm kind of waiting, and I think there is something coming on both of those levels, but they should really be aggressive with that. But if you get any tax breaks and the American people start to understand, I think they will start to put money into the mining sector, which previously, Roger, nobody does. Nobody understands it. Nobody cares.
As you heard there is stuff that is currently happening. It is a space which is critical, which is why we have the name for them, critical minerals. But maybe the tax breaks are coming. Maybe there is enough attention now coming from the people on high who will be able to say, look, we need to change this landscape and make it more attractive for individual investors like ourselves to really get this sector moving. It's going to take a long time, and this could be a long-term opportunity.